Success Academy Union Square, kindergarten and first grade scholars. Mr. Vansville is back with you with another video. So let's jump right into it. Last week we spoke about capturing, and this week I want to speak about protection and keeping your pieces safe. And I would argue that protecting your pieces is way harder than capturing pieces. As scholars learn the pieces and how they move and which piece is in the direction of which their piece is moving, they quickly get a thrill out of capturing others' pieces. But one skill that takes a little bit longer is learning that your pieces are in danger and that you need to keep it safe. And sometimes that may be more important than actually capturing another piece. So let's check it out. Hopefully you heard that cool sound that I just heard as well. So let's talk about protection. The first rule in protecting a piece is to identify which one of your pieces is under attack, right? And with that comes with a very good knowledge of how the pieces move and how pieces capture. Remember, pawns capture differently than the way they move. So it's very important that you realize how pieces move and how they capture, what squares they control, and how to make those pieces safe. So for example, we have this red line here, this bishop on e5 is threatening, preparing to capture the rook on a8. We don't want a 3-point bishop to take a 5-point rook for free. In fact, we need to get this piece to a safe square. The first thing we need to identify is everywhere that this rook can possibly move right now. Right now, we know this rook cannot ever jump over other pieces, so we cannot move up on the A file. So let's see if we can move across the first rank. Again, we cannot jump over other pieces, so it seems like I have these two squares limited to me right now, B1 and C1. Now, we need to take a nice scope of all the black pieces that are on the board and make sure that they are not attacking any of the squares that we wish to move to. So I would ask, is the square B1 safe right now? I agree. If we go to B1, this bishop, this light square bishop on F5 is also now sending an attack to the square B1. So if I put my rook on B1, the bishop will just capture me diagonally. How about the square C1? Yeah, I think this is safe. If I move my rook to C1, this bishop here only attacks A1. This bishop here only attacks B1. So my square C1 is super duper safe. Let's try another example here. So it says you are under attack. Escape the threat. No. Right now, this is a trick, right? Because it doesn't tell you whose turn it is to move. So again, instantly knowing how the pieces move and reminding yourself how the pieces move will indicate which piece is in danger. We know our knights move in L shapes, right? So right now, this knight is no possible way attacking this queen. We know this queen moves in diagonals. We know this queen moves on files, which are the letters up and down, and we know that knights move on ranks, which is side to side, our numbers. And if we identify this, we realize that this knight is actually in danger. So let's focus on this knight. We have the piece that is in danger, and we need to get to a safe square. So right now, your job is to do 1, 2, turn in every single direction and see which square is possibly safe so the queen cannot capture on her next turn. Is E8 safe? I agree, the queen attacks the square. Is the square D7 safe? I agree, the queen attacks diagonally and controls the square. How about the square D5? Yep, awesome, rocking it. The queen can capture here on D5 and moves diagonally. And how about this square E4? I agree, the queen can capture here on E4 diagonally. Do we have any safe squares, any good squares we can move to without being captured? Yeah, I think in this example, we're gonna have to move away. Okay, so how about 1-2 turn, G8? If my knight's on G8, the queen cannot capture, it cannot get to that square. So we're all good if we go to the square G8. H7 is also another great square. We also have the option of 1-2 turn H5 and 1-2 turn G4. So if you move to any of these 4 squares, you're safe. If you move to any of these 4 squares, the queen will be able to capture you. So be very careful. Let's try another one. There is no escape, but can you defend? Now, there's another form of defending. The first form of defending we just discussed, or protection, is to move your piece to a safe square. The second form of defending we're going to discuss is bringing a helper piece, bringing another friend to prepare to capture back if your piece is captured. If this queen right now, we move in every direction that this queen can move in right now, we quickly realize, oops, let's try that again. We realize that it is the knight in danger and not the rook. Okay, so it's this knight that is currently in danger. Right now, if we continue with our plan here, we quickly realize that 1-2 turn, uh-oh, the queen will get me. 1-2 turn, uh-oh, the queen will get me. 1-2 turn, uh-oh, the queen will get me. So the queen will get me on all 3 of these squares. These are not safe squares for Mr. Vancepool or for us. This is not a good square for us. Right now, we call this knight trapped. This knight has no way to move where it will be safe from being captured. So our job right now is to find another piece on the board that could possibly come over and protect this knight the same way that it moves. Where could we move a second white piece on the board to protect this rook on a7? I mean, the knight on a7. I agree. If we move our rook up to over to a2, the rook now on a file, because the rook moves up and down, is protecting this knight. So if the queen decides to capture this knight, if the rook is on a2, I know on my next turn I can capture the queen here on a7. How about this square g7? What do we think? I think it protects the knight. I thought I could get you guys. You're totally right. If I move to g7, you're totally right. The queen could move sideways and capture my rook. So I'm going to lose my rook. So I agree, rook a2 is correct. Another way to process your thoughts is to think, right now, there are 2 pieces in danger. Can we find which 2 pieces that are in danger? You got it, kiss your brain, super awesome. The queen attacks the bishop, and it also attacks this pawn. How in the world are we going to make one move to protect 2 pieces at the same time? Mr. Vancepool, that sounds impossible. It sounds like we need 2 turns to make this happen. But if you think about what I said earlier, and your pieces defend the same way they capture, then you can find a very clever move here to have 2 pieces defending each other at the same time. If you get this one, you're a super duper all-star. I agree. If you move the pawn up to c5, then instantly, this pawn is defending this bishop diagonally. So if the queen decides to capture the bishop, the pawn can recapture the queen. Also, if the pawn moves up to c5, if the queen decides to capture the pawn on c5, the bishop can move back and recapture the queen diagonally. Awesome, kiss your brain. Way to go. Now, there is no escape, but can you defend? Now, this is when this gets a little bit trickier. Our bishop on f6 is, well, the bishop on f6 is attacking our rook on a8, a1, okay? So this rook on a1 is in danger. As we discussed earlier, rooks do not jump over pieces. So that means I cannot get to the square C1. That means I cannot jump over the pawn on A2. That means I only have one square, and that's B1. But sit and ask yourself, is the square B1 a safe square? No, this rook is controlling B1. So if we move our rook to B1, rook captures B1, and we're going to lose our rook. So if there's nowhere for my rook to run away, how can we take away this bishop's long attack and block this bishop's attack to the rook on A1? Okay, fair. We could go to B2. We could put the bishop on B2, but then that's one attacker and two attackers on our bishop and no defenders. So the bishop can easily capture the bishop on B2, and you're just going to lose 3 points. This is also a good answer. D5, D4, or E5. I agree that it does block the bishop from attacking this rook on the A1. However, this knight is not going to be defended now, and my bishop can easily capture on either square. Lastly, the only other way to defend is moving this itty bitty pawn. Remember, the pawn on the first move can move 1 or 2 squares. So I'm going to elect to move 2 squares and stop this bishop from attacking my rook. Now you say, but Mr. Vansipool, the bishop can just capture the pawn. I would question, is this pawn defended on D4? Absolutely correct. The bishop captures the pawn, and the knight 1-2 turn can capture back. So black is going to get a 1-point pawn, but you're going to get a 3-point bishop in return, and we will take that every single time. Let's try a few more a little quickly. So don't let them take any undefended piece. So right now, you have to first identify which piece is in danger. You never have to ask whose turn. You should just look at all of the pieces and see which piece is in danger. You'll instantly see that this bishop is diagonally attacking and threatening to capture this rook on G2. Now, my first thought is to move away. I can't go anywhere side to side or up because there are pieces all around me. We call this smothered in. However, I could move down to G1, but I would ask, before you move that rook, is it safe? It's not safe. Be careful. If you move the rook to G1, this rook on A1 can capture you. So if we can't run away with our piece and move away from the attack, how can I block this attack? How can I stop this bishop's vision from attacking my rook on G2? If you learn from the last example, you are so awesome. Yes, I agree. You can move the knight 1-2 turn and stop this bishop from attacking the rook. If the bishop captures the 3-point knight, how could we recapture? I agree, with the pawn, and you'll be good to go. Again, let us find the piece that is currently not defended. I think this knight does attack the bishop, but I think I have a defender. I think this queen attacks this knight, but I think I have a defender. And I think this rook attacks the bishop, but I don't think I have a defender of this bishop. So I'm going to have to get it to a safe square ASAP, as soon as possible. We have many options here, actually. I could safely move my knight 1-2 turn and defend the bishop this way. I could slide my rook over to B1. And could you find one more example for me? I agree. You can move the bishop over to C3, even down to C1 to get out of this vision of the black rook. I can even protect this bishop one more way with bringing the rook up to A2. Last one for today. Right now, our queen is attacking something that is not defended. We could capture this rook. We could capture this knight. But is it safe to do so? I agree. My bishop is prepared to capture back. Right now, this queen is not really looking at this pawn. That's not how queens move. They move in straight lines. So I think it's this bishop that's in danger. So your job to end our video today is to tell me, how could we safely defend or protect this bishop? This one's a little tricky. I think we could move our bishop away, but the consequence of moving your bishop away means if I move my bishop away to f1, my rook on f5 can now be captured. If I move my bishop back to b1, my knight can now be, not exactly. Okay, the bishop here, this is actually a good move. This is safe because the rook protects the knight. But if I move my bishop back to f1, I will lose this bishop on f5. There's also one way to protect this bishop. How can we defend this bishop as the bishop defends the knight? I agree, rook to f3. If you move your rook to d5, this rook is still not defended and the queen can easily capture. So let's go with our good answer of rook f3, and you nailed it. Good job, you guys rocked it, lesson complete. Remember that if you want a chess kit account, have your parents reach out to Mr. Vanderpool, and I will do what I can to get you an account. Until we meet again, my good friends, keep on playing chess, and don't forget to request me on Lee Chess if you make an account, and my name is Storm X Phoenix. If I can find it here, I cannot. Up right here at the top. Let me move my icon. Storm X Phoenix. StormXPhoenix. Feel free to follow me. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you like this chess video and you would like more content. Bye now.